My name is Daniel Tapp, and appearing here on behalf of myself and the community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tapp, when you're ready.
Okay. First, I'd like to just start on the social licence issue, and most of what I've got to say here is my personal experiences in the last 3 to 4 years. And the first one starts off with the social licence issue. I've been part of frack-free surveys in the Northern Territory, from Nooka, Mataranka, Adelaide River up to Kamali, and these studies were done by presenting some evidence or a point of view, and then giving the community several weeks to make a decision, their own decision, and then votes were taken after that. And on these communities, they range from 90 to 96% against fracking, opposed to fracking. And yeah, so that's on the social licence issue. And then also to back that argument is that, you know, on your consultations, the inquiries, consultations in these various locations, when we've had, or when the inquiries had the hands up votes in favour or against, these votes were almost unanimously against. And this was presented in front of the inquiry panel, and in the report, the social licence reports, there doesn't seem to be a reference to a direct no social licence issue in the communities. The next one I'd like to go on to is a consultation with traditional owners. I was watching live stream yesterday and seen Santos saying that communications, consultations and everything were all basically rosy-posy, nothing to worry about. From a first-hand experience between the Northern Land Council and traditional owners of the Allawa Land Trust, I was invited to several meetings between these two groups, and at one particular meeting held in Mataranka, I was evicted from the meeting. I didn't say a word. I was asked by traditional owners to come and, you know, help them digest what was being proposed. I was evicted from that meeting. The traditional owners bailed up basically and said they wanted me back to listen. The Northern Land Council said, no, we're not going to have any further meetings if he's here. Then the traditional owners said, well, we'll have our own meeting and we'll discuss it between ourselves while we're here. And they had a discussion, and at the end of that discussion, they were totally opposed to the licence, the exploration licence granted to Hancock Prospecting on the Allawa Land Trust. When they asked for an agreement, what the agreement said and who signed it, the NLC, Northern Land Council, said that they weren't allowed to see this agreement. They couldn't even see their own agreement and who signed it. So I'm not sure there's too much transparency in that. Next one I'd like to go on to is well integrity. From personal experience and reports and comments on mainstream media, in the Sturt Plateau, there's 5 exploration wells drilled there. I can't find the information on if there was any fracked or which were fracked and which weren't. I've actually tried getting freedom of information under the Freedom of Information Act. This is going to cost several thousand, like $5,000 to $7,000. This was lodged by the EDO in Darwin, and because we didn't have the funding, we could never follow up. So I decided to basically do a little bit of my own research. In this research, I found that out of the 5 wells on the Sturt Plateau, which were done by Pioneer, 3 of those wells were classed faulty, condemned, plugged and abandoned. Also, a water bore being drilled nearby, within 20 kilometres away, on a neighbouring property, was being drilled. It caught on fire when they were cutting off the casing to put the bore head on top. Caught on fire. The owner of the property, he's a pro fracker, he told the driller not to report this to Water Resources. The driller did report this to the Water Resources, but somehow that report was watered down that it was a smell of gas. It didn't, the word ignite or caught fire did not exist in that report. So this gives us a little, little confidence in, transparency in the whole system. And might I add, on that ad is Appia now, as one of their ads, is using a fella on mainstream media claiming that they can coexist with fracking. And he's got 2 fracking bores on his property, and he's not concerned about water. And I mean, he's got 2 faulty bores on that water, or at least 1, that have been plugged and condemned and abandoned. He's got no infrastructure on pipelines or any infrastructure at all other than 1 dodgy well. This leads on then to my visits at the Mungie well, the golden egg as they call it. I first visited the Mungie well when it was first flared. That well, in my opinion, was illegally fracked because it was granted 3 days before the last election when they're supposed to be in caretaker mode, and as the votes came in, basically the CLP government realised that they were going to get the boot, so they granted this frack licence without consent or anything. A month or 2 later, that well was fracked. A friend of mine driving past there saw it off the side of the road at night, contacted me. I went down there the next day and had a look. A video footage of it flaring. What did look strange to me at the time was the above ground waste pond for the wastewater still looked like it was being reconstructed. It was only half done. So I'm not sure what they might have done with the wastewater. That afternoon, when we went back to Mataranka, there was a big mob of trucks there. When I say a big mob, 4 trucks, road trains, 3 tanker loads. Got talking to the truck driver, where were they going, what were they doing? He told me we're waiting on directions. We're going out to the Mungie well to cart fluid off. I said, where are you carting that? And he said, well, we were supposed to be going to Queensland, but now they're talking about New South Wales. So don't ask me what that means. That was what he told me. And I have a witness there that witnessed that. And that was toll transport. Yeah, and then going on, going on furthermore on that well, the next time I visited, I took a friend with me, because also another friend, this friend drives trucks on that road quite regularly. He's an anti-fracker, and he told me, he said, come down here and have a smell at this place. Stinks. I went down there a couple of days later. When I walked in to the gateway, parked on the road, because there was a big water hole right on the road there, and walked in, and about halfway in, it was an unmistakably stinking smell of sulphur dioxide, I'm led to believe. I don't really know the science on what chemicals, but I've been told that it's most likely sulphur dioxide. As we walked in, this is probably about 200 or 300 metres away from the actual well head, on the outside of the perimeter of the well. Along that fence there's also three vents, little short vents about this high, and they all seem to be rattling, like as in they were breathing You could hear them rattling. I was silly enough actually to have a little smell to see what I could smell. I couldn't smell anything. There was no sulphur smell or the rotten egg smell around there. We went over to the wellhead to see if the smell was coming from there. Walked out, and then we got the smell again in the same area as when we walked out. And on that same visit, here is the picture of a dead wallaby. I mean, that could be anywhere, obviously, but I can assure you it's at the Mungie site, and it's right beside the fence. That's on the inside of the well area. You see the barbed wires there. I'm on the outside, and I'm led to believe that sulphur dioxide causes organ failure in humans and animals. And to me, that kangaroo there looks like it's had some sort of hemorrhage and basically couldn't control its bowels. So that's basically that picture there. Yeah, so that was that visit. And then just before Christmas, I decided I wasn't doing much. I decided I'll go down and have another look and see what's happened down there. When I got down there, the first thing I noticed was the wellhead had changed. It used to be, it originally was just a big round wellhead, and then now there's a big cross. I'm led to believe they call it the Christmas tree because there's presents for everyone under there apparently. Anyway, the Christmas tree, and now it's also got a bunch of brand new gauges on it, brand new taping, thread tape, big red tags on it. Danger, danger, danger. And so basically they've changed that wellhead over, I'm not sure exactly what dates they changed it. This all happened over probably a 6-month period last year. Since then, I've found out that the inquiry panel has visited there, and I'm just sort of putting 2 and 2 together that basically they've changed this wellhead to get rid of the smell and move the plug to basically clean the site up. And the report yesterday, handed by Lock the Gate in Darwin, talking about this failed well or deformed well, supports my personal argument that there is a failure there. And not only is there possibly a failure in the well integrity itself, we've got a fault line running through that well, a geological fault line. That fault line, under world's best practices, should not be anywhere near a well. So this golden egg and this category 9 world's best practices unbreakable well is failing, and a fault line through it. And we get in mainstream media, the golden egg, 1 million litres or whatever it is a day, fruit for all, and it's actually failing and it's not producing. And then in Origin's reply yesterday, they said they didn't put that in the report because it might interfere with their shareholders' opinion. And this is said in the recording that I listened to on live stream, that it was about shareholders, that they didn't want to put it in there to bluff shareholders. So they're putting their shareholders' fortune in front of our security, our water and food security. I think this is just outrageous. All we hear about in the spin from, government and industry is about how secure these wells are, which I've got no faith in. Science tells me that all wells will fail. There's nothing you can do about that. In time, they will all fail. And 120 recommendations, regulatory recommendations, to me, with minimising the risks, is basically doing that. Minimising the risk that is inevitable, cushioning it, putting regulations so industry can dodge this way, that way. It's not my responsibility That was there, no baseline data, so we've got no evidence. The companies have got no insurance over their own actions, no guarantees. So then if the government forces me to sign a mandatory land access agreement, who's responsible? Is it the government for making it mandatory for me to sign this agreement that I don't want to because I know it's going to fail? Or is it the industry? So we've got two people, and I don't want to go suing the government, that's suing the taxpayers. Our money, suing ourselves for something that we didn't want in the first place. So I can't work that one out. Then we go on to government and industry saying about these jobs and economics. Well, on the jobs one, how the bloody hell are we going to, excuse the language, but how are we going to work here if we've got no water and no industries to work in? Fisheries are gone, pastoralism's gone, horticulture, agriculture, if they're all gone, where are we going to work? They might have a few jobs for these 500 workers over the next 25 years, predominantly fly-in, fly-outs. What's the thousands of people in the territory? What are we going to do? We're going to have to move interstate. Can't go to Queensland. They've got frack fields there and having the same problems. Should be the biggest green light of all. And we've got Origin Energy down there in court with Sally McDowell now, whistleblower, you know, with these breaches of, I don't know, breaches of law, regulation, whatever you want to call them. And they're breaches because they can't regulate it. They cannot physically, scientifically regulate it. Accidents happen, science says it will fail eventually. Whether it be now or in 100 years, they will all fail. The jobs one, just getting back on that, there's very rubbery figures there that keep ranging from 500 to 13,000. I think Justice Pepper said that there was lack of information to confirm this at one stage. I'm led to believe it's around the 500 jobs over 25 years, which is peanuts. I mean, I've employed more than 500 people in the last 25 years. Getting back to the insurance and guarantees, all this gets poured on us with no insurance, no guarantees, no rights. We got to coexist. And then finally is the economics. Economics, very rubbery figures been floating around for the last 4 or 5 years, ranging from $450 million to $850 million. Over how many years, I don't really know. They're the rubbery figures. These rubbery figures were quoted as rubbery figures. Now we're back down to $35 million per year. And whether it be $35 million or $100 million, $2 billion, what value do we put on our environment and our water? We got nothing. We got nothing at all without water. Nothing at all. We got to pack up and go. End of story. And the risk is more than likely. Mitigating the risks or minimising the risks, in my opinion, is just not acceptable. And it's worldwide. There's more than enough evidence worldwide to say that this industry should be banned. And I recommend strongly that you vote for, recommend a ban. That's about my speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tapp. I just want to make a few points of, I guess, well, first of all, the first question I have and then a few points of clarification. So the 5 wells on the Sturt Plateau, which you said that there were a number that had been plugged and abandoned and were possibly faulty, if I've understood your evidence correctly, or your submission correctly. You said you did your own research. What was that research?
That was research that I believe Lock the Gate done. Sorry, it wasn't Lock the Gate. It was Don't Frack Katherine done a couple of years ago. A lady by the name of Charmaine Roth that has left now. Yep, and she would have that documentation. She's previously somewhere
presented to the inquiry before. All right, thank you for that. Again,
and may I just say on that,
of course.
on that on the fire bore on the Sturt Plateau
Yep.
that I was saying, the bore,
Yeah.
there was well, it wasn't a report apparently, it was just a comment, a media release by the CSIRO that, and his opening line was, the scientist or whoever he was from the CSIRO, I can't even remember his name, I'm not a real good name memorer, but he said in his opening line was, although not familiar with this, with the geological formation of this area, it is quite common and natural for this to happen. Well, I spoke to the bore driller, and a fellow that I've known for years, Danny Webb Smith. He told me after 45 years of drilling in northern Queensland, Northern Territory and Western Australia, that he's never seen this happen in limestone and basalt. Tight rock is possible, never in limestone or basalt. And might I add, that limestone country there's caves. Caves, God only knows where they go. So, you know, it appears to me that this gas is coming from most likely one of these faulty wells nearby.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of points of clarification just in relation to the jobs, but I understand the submission which you make, which is, well, there's really not that many jobs that are going to be created by this industry, and the figures go up and down depending on, you know, which report you look at. But just to correct you, it was 524 jobs averaged out per year over 25 years. So it's not 524 jobs in total for 25 years. That's job years as an average of jobs per year. And that's based on the Assel-Allen estimate of 670 wells. Social license, again, we didn't ask Coffee to determine whether there was or was not a social license to operate in the Northern Territory if the government lifts the moratorium. What we asked them to do is effectively, we asked them to assume that there wasn't one, and how could that be obtained? We asked them to build a framework. That's what we asked them to do. That's what we've delivered. It will be up to us. I think it's our job as the panel to make sure we put in the report, and it is in the interim report, and it's in the executive summary of the draft final, to record that certainly to the communities that we've gone to, and the people who've presented before us, that, and I think I'll just wait for the jet to pass, and I'll use the same words that were in the interim report, that overwhelmingly the people who have come to these meetings and presented before us have been against fracking. We will record that. That has been recorded, and that will continue to be recorded, because that has continued to be the case. So that's our job. We didn't ask Coffee to do that. They didn't do it. That's our job. And finally, in relation to the material presented yesterday by Lock the Gate, you would have been aware of the exchange that took place. You would have been aware of the subsequent explanation by Dr. David Close on behalf of Origin, who clarified the provision of those two diagrams, and you will also be aware of the fact that this panel has taken the view, pursuant to his explanation, based on his explanation, that in fact the misdeeds that were attributed to Origin by Lock the Gate yesterday were absolutely wrong. They were false. Lock the Gate was provided with the opportunity to clarify their remarks. They did so. They were provided with an opportunity to apologize. They did not do so, and that's where the matter has been left. All right. Do we have any?
How do you find this information to be false? Just because of
it's not the information contained in the diagrams that's false. It's the characterization that was attributed to the provision of those two documents that was given yesterday to the panel. That does not appear to be correct.
On the principle of the report is that basically, you know, talking about transparency and lack of trust. Why wasn't this report, you know, produced publicly, not through the inquiry, by government or by industry, you know, in the front page of the Northern Territory News, for argument's sake, instead of putting on there this $1 million gas well, why didn't they put in there that it's, you know, been deformed and a bit dodgy?
Well, again, I would urge you to listen again to the explanation that Dr. Close provided to explain hang on, please, Mr. Tapp, please let me finish. To explain that data. I don't know why it wasn't, I can't comment on, obviously, the internal processes of Origin, but what I do know, and as I said yesterday, that material was in the public domain, certainly as of the 25th of May last year, for all the world to see.
Without the references to the picture, without the references?
The diagram that was put before the panel yesterday by Lock the Gate, that has been in the public domain since the 25th of May, 2017. And that was pursuant to a request for further information, dutifully answered by Origin from the panel on the 18th of April, 2017.
So if it was available on the 25th of May, then why wasn't this, you know, I mean, like, why wasn't, as in, it was available, but why wasn't it sort of said and being promoted as rather than a very one-sided view that it's, you know, well integrity never fails? I mean, this is the whole argument about science and well integrity, and it's basically being shoveled down the side.
I understand the submission. Do we have any further questions? Yes, Dr. Jones.
You mentioned the smell of bad smell. I'm a chemist, so I can probably suggest that might be hydrogen sulfide rather than sulfur dioxide, because hydrogen sulfide is quite a toxic gas. Were there any wastewater ponds on the site when you smelled them?
No, it's all cleared. And roughly where the smell was where I'd seen the above ground waste pond. It was as you're sort of basically the wellhead, and it was before the wellhead. It was between the wellhead and the main road where the smell was. It appeared to me that it was coming out of the ground or sitting on the ground or something, because there was nothing at the wellhead or in the vents. So I don't know what was coming out of the vents, but they were definitely producing something.
Because certainly sometimes you can get those conditions in waste ponds where you get a bit of hydrogen sulfide produced. So that's why I was seeking that clarification to see if we could try and get a better idea of the source. That
picture of the kangaroo is in the background there is the well pad, and as you can see, there's nothing left, just the well.
No, we only saw the wellhead, we didn't see anything else.
So just clarifying, it was the Amungi well?
Yep.
Thank you. I thought so.
Any further questions? Oh, yes, Dr. Ritchie.
Mr. Tapp, just to clarify, the meeting that you were told to use your words, were evicted from, was with convened by the NLC at Giltmingan or Mataranka?
Well, there was two actually, one at Giltmingan and one at Mataranka.
About Hancock prospecting leases up on the land trust land?
Yep.
Okay. Now, was that meeting one where they were actually looking for an agreement or not, or was it subsequent to an agreement already being signed?
Subject to an agreement already being signed.
Okay.
And they were looking to begin exploration, and they were basically informing the traditional owners what their intentions were.
Okay, so by the time that meeting took place, there was already an agreement in place between traditional owners and Hancock Prospecting that had been done through a process that had happened before, which, yeah, okay. I just really want to check that, because it was just your comment later that they asked to see the agreement, and then it was the agreement they asked for was the one that gave the underlying approval for that work.
Well, what actually happened was, like I say, the agenda for the meeting was put up on the public notice board, and obviously, you know, people were notified in various different ways, and that it was to talk about exploration. Some of the traditional owners said, well, who said they're going to do any exploration? We don't know. Where's an agreement? We don't know anything about it. So it caused a little bit of division in there, because no one knew who signed it. No one knew. There was one traditional owner that said that she thought she'd signed it, but none of the traditional owners were produced with any sort of documentation or any and as far as I know, that still today, that no agreement has been, and apparently it is law or legislation, whichever you want to call it, that the Northern Land Council and government, I assume, is that they don't have to show it. They can show it, but they can't give it. They can't give that agreement to a traditional owner, and then that traditional owner can't take it to another lawyer and get a second opinion on it.
And again, just for the record, that it's the case, I gather, that the reason that you were asked to attend the meeting by traditional owners because of very long-standing, basically growing up with a lot of those people, and so it was, you were just brought along as another pair of eyes and ears to.
And I employ a fair few of those people there, and sort of associate with them quite often.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Again, Mr. Tapp, thank you for coming along today, and thank you for coming along for all of the meetings that we've held here and your continued participation in the inquiry. It's certainly been very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.